Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back in to OTRAM's YouTube channel, your source for Land Cruiser maintenance and repair videos. Today we're doing timing cover and timing chain on a 1FZ-FE out of an 80 series Land Cruiser. So we've got, well, you can't see it yet, but I'll move the camera in just a minute. Engine's already out of the truck because it's a lot easier to get everything loose with it out of the truck. We've already pulled the head off. So it can go out to the machine shop while I'm doing this. So I figured we'd start from the head being off and get into doing this. So let me move cameras so you can get a better view of the engine, and I'll be right back. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the engine out and upside down. You can do this in the truck, but it's a lot easier with the engine out. We've already got the head off. We've already taken the AC brackets off the side and gotten that stuff out of our way. So we can start up here and take the crank sensor brackets and everything off and get those out of our way. And it's just a couple of 12mm bolts, and I forgot the battery for my impact. I'll be right back. Okay, remembering the battery for your impact helps. We're going to take these 3 bolts out to get this cover off. And then there's one more wire clip bolt here on the side. And take that one out. Stick the bolts off to the side. And then there's 2 10mm nuts holding the sensor itself in. Come on. Pop those off real quick. And then we can just kind of wiggle and pull the sensor up out of the hole. And it's got an O-ring on here that we'll end up replacing. And then down here, let me move this a little bit. Right down here on the side is the float for your oil level gauge. So we're going to pop that guy off. And it's just 4 10mm bolts, or 10mm headed bolts. And then it just kind of wiggles out of there also. Although it's feeling a little stuck. There's a little lip here to pry against. And then you can fish that out. We'll set that off to the side. And now we can start popping this lower oil pan off. And we're just going to go around. Okay, so we've got all the bolts out for this lower steel pan. So you just kind of use a screwdriver and wiggle that guy loose and pull it off. Oh, and it's got some nice chunks in it. I don't know if you guys can see the chunks that are sitting there in the bottom. And now we can go ahead and start taking the lower oil pan off, or I guess upper oil pan. And then on the lower, and it helps if I grab the right size socket. Actually, I'm going to do the 12s first. So scoot this back, see if I can get you in the frame there. There's a bunch of 12mm bolts going around the perimeter in the front half. And there's a pair of nuts here in the front. And then on this side, there's a couple of them down inside where the lower pan was covering. And then the rearmost ones are 14-headed. Let me go get a ratchet to pop those free. Whew. And those are tight. And if you're putting this on an engine stand like I've got it, make sure you pay attention to which holes on the back of the engine you use. When Danny originally put this on the stand, he used the bottom holes where the bell housing would go, which make it so you can't get the oil pan off because it's using those holes. So just go back through, make sure you've got everything off. And we do. And then you can come in, and there's a couple of spots where there's places to put a pry bar or a screwdriver in between the halves to pop it loose. And then you can just take the whole lower pan off and pour oil down your pants. So there's the oil pans off. So now we can actually get to the timing cover and everything in the front. Let me roll this back over and move the camera around, and I'll bring you back in just a minute. And we've already taken the balancer off. If you need one, I'll put a link down below. We've got a crank holding tool that we sell that makes removing and reinstalling the crank bolt much easier. And the reason we're actually doing all this is right here in this valley between the timing cover and the block, it's been spewing oil. And there's a high pressure O-ring right behind here that seals the two, similar O-ring to the one that goes in here. So we're pulling this all down to get to that O-ring. And theoretically, you can leave the head on and just put new sealer along this surface and kind of squish that back up into place and do it in the truck with everything on there. I don't really like doing it. Well, I've done it once on a 22 RE that way, and it came back to haunt me. It leaked. So I haven't done it that way since. It's real hard to get all the surfaces clean and finagle everything back up in there and keep all the sealer where it should be to try to avoid doing the head. There's a real good chance that if you try to cheat and don't pull the head, that your cover is going to leak anyway. So we pull the head, pull the oil pans. That way we can get in and clean all the surfaces and make sure everything is sealed back up. And it makes for a much better job, which with much lower risk of it coming back. So we can just take all the timing cover bolts out now. again like we did before. We're going to look around and make sure that we got everything before we start prying on the aluminum cover. And sometimes on things like this, it's really hard to make sure that you've gotten everything because it's so covered in grime. But it looks like I've got everything, so we're going to come back down here to where one of the pry grooves is. We're going to pop that loose. And we're going to come over here. And where's a good spot to pop that? There we go. There, everything's broken loose. And just wiggle that off the studs. And there we go. And this little O-ring right here is the cause of all our problems. And you can also see like all the old sealer that glued this on has just gotten brittle and is crumbling. There's another O-ring up here for coolant that's just wasted. So all this will go through the parts washer. And I'm gonna leave that in there for now. That's the gear that drives your oil pump. And then your power steering pump would come through here and catch the other side of this gear. So I'm going to set this cover off to the side to make a trip through the parts washer. And now I can just take the chain and the sprockets and go ahead and pull the lower sprocket, well, most of the way off. There we go. Take the lower sprocket off, get everything out of here. Oh. And I forgot to bring a 10 over. I'm gonna go grab a 10mm hex, and then it's just this 12 and this 12 to get the guides off. So I'm gonna pull this guide first. There we go. I'm gonna put these bolts back here so I remember where they came from. Let me go grab a 10. And we've just got to move the camera down just a hair so you can see better. There we go. I've just got a 10mm hex socket. Break that guy loose. And pull that out, and we've got new timing chain guides, new timing chain sprockets, and all that in the parts room for this. So this is, don't bump this wheel at all or chip it. This is what your crank sensor reads off of. So you want to be very careful of messing around anything around that. We can go ahead and take that. Oh, that's just rotten. The O-ring shouldn't just crack out of there like that. Knock that off. I'm gonna come through, I'm gonna wash all those parts through the parts washer. I'll come through with a scraper and clean all this up and hose it all down and brake clean to get it all good to go back together. And once we're back ready for reassembly, I'll bring you guys back around. But that is the quick and dirty on doing the timing chain disassembly on a 1FZ. If you need to know how to get the heads off, we've got a separate, several part series, it's like 3 or 4, on doing the head gasket as a separate assembly. So yeah, so there's pulling the timing chain. Hope you found that useful. If you did, please subscribe below, and if you really like the videos, check out our Patreon link down in the description. The support is always appreciated. And I'll get this all cleaned up, and I'll come back with part 2. Thanks.